What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Doll Benfica podcast, episode number 209. We're here tonight with Steve Santos. What's going on, Steve Santos?
Crying babies in the background. Living the life, man. Living the life.
It's all good, man. It's part of life.
Such is good. It's good, man. Being a dad's awesome, but, when they cry, it does get tiring.
And Negative George is here. What's going on, Negative?
I'm back. Just my summer is coming to an end. The soccer season started. Binge listening to last few podcasts, and a pleasure to be on.
Great. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I think that right now you're up there in the tallies of how many times you've been on. I think you're probably one of the most frequent guests, I would say. Steve, what do you think?
This is exciting, but I don't know if I've been on with Steve. Maybe only once.
Yeah, you have at least once. At least once.
Really? Oh,
at least once. I remember.
Not to say that Steve isn't memorable enough for me to remember. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, and the other angle that you can look at is that you're good enough to replace Steve.
Well, those are big shoes to fill.
I wouldn't go that far.
That's a big That's a big chalkboard to fill up.
All right, so on tonight's podcast, we will look back at the Torino game, the Eusebio Cup game, and we'll also look back at the last game of the preseason against Lyon in France, which took place over the weekend. I'll give you the lineup just to give you the lineups against Torino. Paulo Lopes, Semedo, Luizão, Lisandro, and Grimaldo, Feza, and Horta, Salvio and Servi, Guedes, and Mitroglou. Then we had a bunch of substitutions at the half. But, again, a loss in the Eusebio Cup, and usually I think that Neil had pointed out an article on Planet Benfica that said usually most of the times when we lose the Eusebio Cup, we end up winning the league, which we hope that is certainly the case this year. Mm-hmm. So we'll just have to see. But, it's good to win the Eusebio Cup, but people have to understand that it's preseason. There's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of heavy legs out there. So, take everything with a grain of salt. I know that last season, without a win in preseason, everybody was down on the team. There wasn't a lot of expectations, but I think this year, because of the strength and the depth of the roster, I think that there's a certain degree of expectations, and also excitement. And George, I was talking to you right before we turned this thing on, and you said that you were excited about the season.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a good point with both the depth of the squad. That's the main reason I'm excited, along with the continuation of the continued presence of most players and the coach. And you started this show listing off the squad from the Lyon game. And I think that's really important for you this year.
Torino game.
Torino game, sorry. I apologize. I think that's really important this year because in previous seasons, you knew who was going to play. And you knew you had your strong 11 and then maybe one or two subs. But this year, from 1 to 23, I think anybody can step in, anybody can play. Obviously, some players are better than others. But there's no Philippe Meniz or whatever, Ayrtons. Yeah. There's none of these guys who are like, these guys are going to just screw up if they go out there.
Well, and what was the Bruno guy with the long hair? Come on.
Bruno Cesar.
No. Cortez. That was the biggest
exactly.
name ever.
Every year we have 4 or 5 guys where it's like, please God, don't let them go on. And this year we don't have that, and that's the depth that that is leading me to believe that we can do well this year and hopefully get the Tetra.
Yeah, Steve, thoughts on the preseason, or I don't know, did you have to get to watch this game?
Torino, I did.
Okay.
The Lyon game, I only caught highlights.
What do you think about Torino? Do you see anything by your standards? Do you see anything that just sticks out? Anything that's we're doing differently?
Versus Torino, the defensive line looks a lot higher than it was last year. It seems like, I don't know if we want to call it an offside trap, but if you watch the first 20-25 minutes, they were caught offside a lot. I don't know if that's really the number one plan is trying to do that, or if it's just showing that we're really trying to compress the space in where the opposition is able to play in. So that's one thing that I've noticed. I don't think we're playing as deep as this year. It looks like the defensive line wants to be a good 10, 15, maybe even 20 yards further up the pitch than it was last year. That may change as the season goes on, but for now, that's definitely something that it looks like we're going after. Um, Going on with George, there's a lot of quality in this roster, especially if you look at the flanks and even the fullbacks. You're looking at guys that if you take one out and you put in the other, you don't really see too much of a difference. It's Nelson Semedo attacks better, but Almeida's probably the all-around better player. Grimaldo is probably going to get the starting spot over Eliseo, but if we get stuck with Eliseo, you're not going to lose much. You know what I mean? Like 2 times he's won the league with us, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of depth out there.
And then you look at the wings, and there's depth for
Even
days
better.
in the wings. I think that even up front with the three guys from last year, and maybe supplement them with another guy like Benitez or even Geddes if he stays on the roster. I mean, that's not too shabby. You know, nobody really too flashy as far as acquisitions go. But nonetheless, a very consistent, deep roster for all the competitions that we need to be in, Steve.
For sure. I don't know. You said Gedge may go, or if whether he stays or not. He's playing a lot of football for a guy who's probably going to get loaned. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see maybe Benitez leave the squad before Gedge does at this point. We'll have to keep an eye on it, but he's playing a lot.
Yeah, and again, just played a lot, and he's played pretty well. He's been involved. He's been, like I said, he hasn't been disappointing, and I think that he's potentially won his spot on the roster this year.
Yeah, but I think that people sometimes forget that Geddes is only 19 years old. He's been around forever. Well, when I say forever, for a couple seasons now. But he's only 19 years old, and I think that people forget that. I think my biggest thing with Geddes is that if he's going to be blocked by guy, if he's going to be the fourth guy in the middle, because forget the wings. I don't think he has a spot on the wings right now. That the way Rui Vitória has been putting him out there has been the one guy supporting the forward. And if that's his intention for Gedge, then you're looking at him being blocked by, not only
3 guys.
Jonas, but you got Benitez also. Right now, I think that you don't want to stunt his growth. I think that you want to give him the best opportunity to keep evolving as a player, especially at 19 years old. I don't think you want to stunt his growth. I agree with Steve that he is getting a lot of football for a guy that seems to be on a block to be loaned out to somewhere. But then again, if you look at the reverse side of the coin, he could be on a shop window to attract the suitors. They're able to pay his wages and have him go on loan.
Possibility. I would like to believe that he's probably got a lot of suitors that are willing to take him on loan.
Yeah.
Whether below the top 4 would take him in a heartbeat. Within Europe is probably where you're going to look at getting some of his wages picked up, and that's where he needs to show off a bit. But we'll have to see. I honestly like the fact that he's playing up front more than on the flanks. I think even better would be to see him playing on top of the last man like Mitroglou does instead of the support striker. But that's an argument that I used to have with Rodrigo as well, and Rodrigo used to do the role in a similar way that Gedge is doing, where he's carrying the ball towards Mitroglou instead of passing it forward and involving other players. So we'll have to keep an eye out to see how he develops as a striker. He has played as striker quite a bit in the youth national team level, so it's not like it's a complete new position for him.
One of the problems that Benfica has in loaning attacking players is that you don't really have the chance to loan attacking players within Portugal, because like Murillo, the Venezuelan guy who's at Tondela, how often is Tondela attacking? So if you're going to loan out Gedge to a bottom half team who defends 80% of the time, what's he going to get out of that? You almost have to loan him abroad somewhere else in Europe, and hopefully like a lesser team or in a lesser country where he can get more of that attacking play that would match up with more Benfica style.
Well, I think it works both ways, and I agree with you when you say that some of these lesser teams play mostly on defense, and the other angle of it or the other side of it, they play on defense, but they bet strongly on the counter attack. And Guedes is a guy that has speed, that could dribble with pace. So perhaps he's a guy that fits a system like that. I think that defensive aspect going into a team like that is something that will round off his game. Not that he's a guy that doesn't work hard on the field, but perhaps he needs to learn a bit more of defensive positioning to his game.
Yeah.
If you follow the podcast and if you've been listening to the podcast for quite some time, this Geds thing playing at forward is something that Steve and I have discussed, and Cristiano also have discussed during our podcast. We thought that he would be a good try up front behind the forward because he's the guy that offers mobility. He's the guy that that has a great work rate. So we thought he would be good playing there. Now, as far as what Steve says, playing up top, he could be that guy that played in the Lima role. I just don't know that he has that type of experience to get away from defenders, to find the open spaces, to sneak past the markings. I just don't know that he has that at 19 years old. So I think right now, if you're going to be blocked, I think the best move for him is going abroad, and I'm not talking about Wolves either, because it seems like everybody's going to Wolves these days.
Yeah. I think I could see him taking up one of those forward spots, either the first option behind Jonas, or moving up if either Raul or Mitroglou gets hurt. But then that really forces Benfica to make a decision on Jovic, and is Benfica willing to not keep Jovic on the roster and basically admitting a €6 million error? That could prevent Guedes from getting one of those spots, and with the wing spots covered, maybe it does make sense to loan him out. But I also hope that this depth leads Rui Vitória to rotate the squad a bit more. There's no reason that with this depth that the players at the end of the season get to that point tired, because no one should have to play all 45 games. There should be enough option when you're hosting the bottom half teams, Feirense or whatever. Put in a Guedes instead of a Jonas once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing with Jonas, and we've all discussed this ad nauseum here, is that Jonas doesn't play very well as a lone striker, the top man up front. He plays more where he could drop in and get balls and drop into spaces, empty spaces. I think that's more of Jonas's thing. But you never know. I mean, Rui Vitória sees these guys every single day, so we're not really sure what he's seeing, what he's trying out, what kind of game ideas he's implementing on a training pitch. That's the one thing that we don't know. So we always have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Another guy that's been playing quite a bit is Andrea Horta, and we've been talking about Andrea Horta. George, what's your feelings on Andrea Horta?
I think he's played all right. He seems like an intelligent player. But he has the unenviable task of replacing, everyone's favorite right now, Renato Sanchez. And the biggest difference I've seen so far is just the physical strength. The difference between Andre Horta and Renato Sanchez. I saw a couple occasions where the defender or the midfielder would come from behind against Andre Horta and kind of bump him, give him a little body, and steal the ball. I don't know if I saw that happen more than once last year to Renato. So he's played well. Unfortunately, we're going to be comparing him all season to Renato, which isn't fair to him, but it's what's going to happen. The fact that he's only 19, I believe, means we shouldn't have that much pressure on him. I'm confident that he'll be able to play well for us this year and in the future, but I don't know if he's the guy at this point to lead this team forward. Now, whether Danilo can be the guy they just brought in from Braga or Valencia or whatever or Club Minge, I'm not sure. But Andre Horta, I think he's more of a future project than for this year.
Yeah, Steve, where do you think that Vitória can deploy Horta the best to his capabilities from what you've seen so far?
From what I've seen so far, I honestly think he could play 8 for us. Honestly, we won a championship with Pizzi playing 8 with a very similar skill set. If anything, I think Horta might have better feet than Pizzi does. He's also a bit quicker than Pizzi. I know he's young, but the guy that we just got would be his replacement or his competition is young as well. Renato Sanchez was young last year. I honestly think that if we play with Andre Horta, we will have to play a different type of football. We're not going to play the football that we played last year. It just won't be to his strengths. You have a player that is more a pass and move player, a guy who's always uh, every time he passes the ball, he's always looking for his next spot on where he's supposed to be on the pitch to receive the ball again. Renato is a different player. Renato is okay. Everybody come to me. I'm going to run through every single one of you, and then I'll find somebody to give the ball. He's more of an anarchist where Horta will want to play with his teammates. And when you look at the type of players that we've got over the offseason, well, Grimaldo was already there, but Servi is another guy who wants to play combinations and is a technique player. We're going away from those more physical, robust players. There's only a handful of them on the squad right now. You have Salviu, you have Mitroglou. I think this Danilo character has probably got a mix of that we didn't have before he showed up. But you have the majority of the guys playing ahead of the defensive midfielder are all technique players.
Yeah.
And that means we might play a little bit more of a pass and move football. If you play with Pizzi, Horta, Jonas, and Servi, that's a lot of pass and move football they can play with. Grimaldo as well, who basically can overload any area of the pitch. The guy shows up as like a fourth midfielder. He shows up as a wide attacker. Sometimes he's right next to the striker. We have a lot of options to play some good possession style football down the middle of the pitch that I think Horta would perfectly fit in to play that way. Whether or not we'll get there, I don't know. But the tools to play that kind of football are there this year.
And I apologize for jumping around, but a big help for Andre Horta will be if Feixa can stay healthy and play. He's been a beast so far in what I've seen in the preseason, and the season hasn't even started yet. If Feixa is able to maintain what he's been doing and stay healthy, that'll be a huge help for Andre Horta, where he'll have a little bit less to worry about on the back end.
Yeah. It's Steve. You mentioned the technical ability and not as robust midfielder. It's quite a very clear contrast to the player that JJ preferred for the midfield.
Absolutely.
JJ preferred the physical type, the guy that could run through players, the guy that could go into the shock, as they say.
The Enzos, the Witzels. We ended up with Pizzi that way because we lost Enzo mid-season, and George Jesus basically said, listen, we're going to have most of the ball. We can probably put a more technical player there. But that 8 was always a more aggressive, powerful guy under JJ, and more like the Renato Sanchez guy that we had last year than Horta, for sure.
Yeah. You guys talk about Samaris and possibly Samaris being a replacement for Face or even Celis. And him and Celis got a chance to start against Lyon. And I got to be honest, I'm a little bit worried, and I don't know if it's because of the streak that Fesa had been having all this preseason, the form that he was showing. But these two guys have not impressed me. And Steve, Samaris, I don't know what's going on with Samaris at this point, man. There's rumors that he might be headed over to Zenit. But at this point, what do you make of this whole Samaris situation?
I can't put my finger on it. I mean, the guy looks to have the right mentality. It doesn't look like he's given up or anything like that. It's constant bad decisions. It's constant bad touches. Something just went off when JJ left to Sporting, and he's never been the same player again. If you want to credit to the man, JJ himself, maybe you can go that way. But Samaris has not been the same player, and I saw reports today, 15 million for him, which would be a 5 million profit, and Benfica's being strong arming whoever it is and saying they want 20. I don't know if that's good business based on what we've seen. As much as I like Samaris, and I think he's a very valuable asset to the locker room because he looks like a born leader, like I've said many times. He picked up Portuguese. He looks like he gets along really well with the rest of the squad, but on the pitch, he hasn't produced, and I really hate to say it, but I would take the gamble with 15 million.
Yeah. What are your feelings, George?
I agree 100% with what Steve said. I remember, in fact, being on a podcast last year where I mentioned how Renato would be helped with the eventual arrival and the presence of Samaris once he started to play well, and it never happened. And it didn't happen last year, and it hasn't happened yet this year. But the mentality's there. He appears, he acts like someone who's been with the club for years. Um, with the Portuguese, it just doesn't make sense. If I could figure out what it was, I would call Benfica right now and call Rui Vitória and let them know how to fix it. But I don't know what to do. And I agree with Steve. Strong arming over a few, not over a few million, but if you're already going to make a profit and it's not working out, you better to almost not cut your losses because you're still making a profit. But I'd rather move him at this point and take that 15 and get someone better, more suited to Rui Vitória's style than to hold on and potentially have a player who's not going to play for you much.
Yeah. George, what are your feelings on Celis so far?
Sales, I haven't seen too much. He did a lot of fouls against Lyon. Now, is that him trying to show what he's worth? Is that him being a step slow every single time? I'm not sure. I think the fact that he didn't come in for that much money, I think it was 2 million, kind of takes a bit of the pressure off of him to gain a spot and the pressure off of Rui Vitória to put him in the lineup. So I'm comfortable with him playing a backup role, learning, adapting, and 'cause he appears to have some skill. He appears to have some presence, some physical presence out there, and I'm confident that within a few jornadas, a few months, that he'll be able to help us.
Yeah, I thought that both Celis and Samaris in the first half of the Lyon game were quite awful. Celis obviously comes from Argentinian football, where it's a lot more physical, where the 50-50 balls are usually followed by some kind of stuff afterwards. So these guys going pretty hard. I don't quite know what he was thinking of when he committed that penalty on one of the twins. I forget what his name is now.
Rafael.
Rafael. But I mean, it was quite rough because the whole time that Rafael is taking the ball into the box, he's kicking him basically,
Yeah.
hitting him on his ankles. So I mean, it was only a matter of time before Rafael just dropped, and there, he doesn't have anything to argue as far as the penalty call. But I thought that it's a big drop off from Fesa, and knowing what we know about Fesa, knowing that he is quite injury prone, I don't know how this midfield is going to shake out with Celis and Samaris. I would hope that that Samaris gets his shit together, man. If not, I think that we have to move on at this point with him. I don't know.
But that's
I'm not
probably
really sure.
the main reason we're keeping him is probably because of Fesa and him being injury prone.
Yeah.
You have a guy who, albeit is not in super great form, knows the system slightly well, knows the position well. I would not be surprised that if Danilo doesn't make a shot at that spot himself, because he's played at 8 and he likes to play at 8, like you said. But I remember quite well that he played at number 6 against us for Braga a couple of years ago. So
and
we'll
that's.
see.
I thought that was a very good get by Benfica, the Danilo, because he could play both at 6 and at 8. So if Samaris does leave, we have the backup. I think that Celis is still too green to play in the Portuguese league. I think he's got a lot of adaptation, a lot of learning to do about the European football in general. I don't think he's a bad player. I just think that he needs to undergo that adaptation period. It's a faster game.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I made a mistake before. I did say that Celis came
Colombian.
from Argentina. Yeah, he came from.
I was going to cut you off, but I feel like I do that too much. So.
He came from Millonarios, right?
I don't remember.
Hopefully Celis can kind of be the reverse Talisca, where Talisca came on like gangbusters for a few months and then kind of tailed off, and now he helps sometimes and he's off some others, and hopefully Celis will be the opposite, where he comes in a little bit slow, but then by 6 months he'll take over and be in charge of stuff.
Yeah. So against Lyon, I'll just run you through the lineup real quick. So Julio Cesar was back in goal finally after suffering from some physical injuries or something that prevented him from starting and from working out. Almeida, Luizão, Lindelof, and Grimaldo. Celis and Samaris. Pizzi and Carrillo on the wings, Guedes behind Mitroglou. And again, at halftime, there was some changes made, some guys that came in. But George, what's your feeling on this back line? And Steve brought up a great point where the back line seems to be playing a little bit more up the field, setting the offside trap. Is Luizão the proper guy to play in a defensive line that is moves up and depends on the defensive trap when is a guy that doesn't have that much speed?
No, I don't think he is, but then I don't think he's going to be playing, starting at least. I expect Lindelof and Jardel to start just as they finished last season. Um, I don't see Benfica selling Jardel because I think it's been discussed on the podcast that only half it would be coming to Benfica because of traffic, and there's no
We just
point
bought him
selling your.
out.
Did they buy the other half? I thought I
Yeah,
read the highlight, but I wasn't
they
sure.
they just bought him out, and he's too conveniently injured all the time now. I ha- I have my very strong doubts that he'll be on the lineup this year, but we'll see.
See, I don't know because
Yeah.
he unless Benfica's getting like 15 million, in my opinion, there's no point in selling on these. There's no point in selling a starter for under 15 million, and I don't see anybody
Yeah,
offering
but
that for a 30-year-old central
yeah,
defender. But anyways,
that's the
I
big thing.
don't I don't think that Luizão will is the guy for that system. But like I said, I don't think he's going to play. I don't see Jardel leaving. Um, but Lisandro isn't that slow. He's a good player. Um, I'm thinking Luizão has resigned to the fact that he's accepted the fact that he might be the fourth option this year and play when one of the other guys aren't available.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think,
well,
Steve?
I'm completely against your thought process. I think one of the reasons we will have to play a high line is if we do have Luizão, that's the only way you can protect his lack of pace, because he's smart enough to be able to anticipate and to play the offside trap and to patrol his line where he's going to not be caught out for pace as often. If you defend deeper, you're only allowing more space for the opposition to play in, more space for the central midfielders to be able to play balls in behind Luizão, and you're conceding space and the ball to the opposition. Benfica is a team that needs to attack. They need to play with a higher line. For me, Luizão is much more protected with a high line than if we were played deeper like we did last year.
See,
Personally,
this for any new listeners out there to the podcast, that's why he's Chalkboard Steve, and I'm just the guy who appears every once in a while and doesn't remember what happened
no,
because I'm too nervous watching the games.
if you think about it though, Luizão, if you're playing deeper, he's still not fast enough to turn around and chase somebody.
That's
So
true.
you're just vacating the space in front of Luizão so the players can run at him. Sorry, they could knock balls in behind him. They could do all kinds of stuff. If you're allowing Luizão to play with the one thing that he definitely still should have is his brain, then you're going to play a higher line and compress the spaces so that, okay, what's behind you is unplayable anyway, hopefully, because of the offside trap. You're going to get caught out a couple times. It's impossible. But when you're going to play in Portugal against Tundela, against Rio Ave, you got caught out. A lot of those times, the Manco forward, like Cristiano would say, is going to screw up the 1v1 with Julio Cesar anyway, or Julio
Yeah.
Cesar is going to beat him to the ball. So you kind of have to play your percentages, and for me, the high line is what you'd have to do with Luizão.
Yeah, I mean I think it's a catch-22. I mean, I understand your logic behind it that if you play a deep line, then you're not controlling the depth or the space in which your team is playing in. But I don't know. I mean, if you play a high line, you open yourself up for your
Balls
back
over the top.
balls over the top and lots of space for guys to run onto, especially on diagonal balls. And I just don't think that Luizão has that speed. That
But
is the
I
very
guess you just need Lindelof or Jardel or whoever his partner is to hopefully get back quick enough
Cover.
to cover up
but
those
it's a big
opportunities.
it's a big field,
Yeah.
but there's that type of logic. I think that's the most basic logic when you look at the high line, and obviously what the chalkboard offers is an excellent point on controlling the depth and controlling the space in which your team plays in. If you guys noticed last year, there was a few games, especially in the Champions League, where we were playing in a space of perhaps 30 yards. I don't know how many
That was
meters is
awesome.
that.
Versus
I don't know.
Bayern,
Yeah, I don't know how many meters that is, and please forgive me. What is 30 yards, Steve?
It's roughly 30 meters. Meters and yards are very close to each other.
Right. So I mean, if you go back and look at those games where the team was the whole team was from the back line to the front line was playing in 30 meters, very compact in order to control the spaces of which the opposition plays in. Then I understand the high line for sure, and it's a way of the team controlling, like I said, the space that the other team plays in, and also it provides for supported football when you have to touch, especially if the direction is going to be combinations between all the technical players that we have, both in the midfield, on the wings, and the guys up front. You need to play in shorter spaces so you could offer support to the guys around you. So we'll just have to see. I don't think that Rui Vitória is going to change a lot. He might tweak a couple things here and there to cater to the guys that he now has on this team that are going to be starters. But I really don't see that big of a change from Rui Vitória. Obviously, Horta and Renato Sanchez are two different players. They provide different things. But I think overall, I think that Horta is a guy that works a lot. I just don't know, and I've been saying here this every week. I don't know if he's the guy to like Cristiano likes to say, to give the keys to the car. A guy that's gonna basically lead this team in the offensive, both on the offensive maneuvers and also on the defensive maneuvers. I just don't know if Horta has that. But then again, as much playing time as he's been getting, it's very possible that come next weekend against Braga, he's in the starting 11.
You
So,
want to predict the starting 11 versus Braga? That's Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. Now, before we get into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Carrillo. Carrillo is coming into his own. I think there's a few flashes of brilliance, but I don't think he's there yet. And if you have to choose, Steve, if you have to choose between Carrillo and Servi, who do you choose?
Servi.
George?
Yeah, same thing. Well, I was never a huge Carrillo fan to begin with, and I know a lot of Benfiquistas are now the biggest fans, and they talked bad about him when he was at Sporting. I think Carrillo is a good player. I think he can help, but right now he's not ready. He's not in game shape. He's not prepared to step in and play yet.
I think he's still, if we do keep him, he's still going to play a big part. Carrillo or Salvio or Zivkovic, any of those three guys coming off the bench is a huge difference in what if we have. Let's say we start with Pizzi
Yeah.
and Servi. You bring on any of those three guys, and there's a just huge difference in the type of skill set that they'll bring compared to what Pizzi has on the other side. So
Yeah.
I think if we do keep Carrillo, and he's going to play a huge part, and he's going to fight for a starting position off of Pizzi or off of whoever's playing on the left, Servi. There's too much ability for him not to fight for a starting position. I don't think he's going to start this season as a starter. He just doesn't look. He doesn't look match fit, like people say.
No.
The touch isn't always crisp. The speed isn't there. I don't know how to the thought processes aren't sharp enough yet. It's like he doesn't click on to the right pass soon enough. He doesn't click on to the right movement soon enough. But there's a player there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I always thought he was a decent player at Sporting. How good, we'll see. But for now, he's not a starter.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you guys. I think that Pizzi on the other side, not only does he provide some balance to that midfield, when he pinches in, he makes up for that third guy in midfield, which a lot of times are now. A lot of teams are now playing with that third guy in the midfield, especially when they know that Benfica only plays with two. They tend to flood the midfield in order to cut down what Benfica is trying to do offensively. So there's a very big possibility that Pizzi will continue on that right side. I think that Salvio is finally progressing, and you're seeing some evolution in his stage, in his form of Salvio. But I don't know if you pick Pizzi over Salvio, Steve.
I picked Pizzi over Salvio.
What about you, George?
I would as well because of the PC's experience playing in the middle in the last little while, and I don't think I put Carrillo and Savio in similar situations, similar positions where they've both been off for a long time. It's like they're trying to recuperate, trying to get the game shape, trying to get the timing back. Already, there's been an improvement in Salvi where he's making runs, where he's beating guys down the center of the field, the side, down the wings. And I think right now maybe they're not ready for 90 minutes. Great subs to put on, 20, 30 minutes, change of pace when necessary. So right now I think PZ would get the spot ahead of Salvi, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that yeah, you're right. I'm there, man. But really, man, the guys that we have, the depth that we have, are really interchangeable, if you will. I think there's going to be very little drop in performance when these guys came in, especially if Rui Vitória does a good job of rotating and giving minutes to these guys where they're going to have some kind of a game shape going on. I think that Rui Vitória has to be very careful in managing this squad this year. And like you said, George, you don't want to get to the end of the season, just like we saw Pizzi at the end of the season, making mistakes because he was just tired mentally.
Yeah.
He was exhausted. So we're hoping that Benfica could rotate a lot of these guys. There's a lot of opportunities. There's weaker opposition that we play against that Rui Vitória could very well manage the squad. Will he be managing the back line? I very much doubt that he's going to touch that center back pairing. So I think that once he establishes a center back pairing, whether it's Jardel Lindelof, whether it's Lisandro Lindelof, whether it's Luizão and Lindelof, which I highly doubt. I think that he's not going to touch that. I think that Grimaldo will give some games to Eliseu. I think that Almeida, now with his injury, Semedo will definitely start in the Super Cup. But all these guys, they're basically interchangeable, to be honest. And it's very encouraging to see Benfica's squad the way it is right now, as deep as it is, and with that many choices, and good choices, if you will.
Yeah.
So
you always hear teams say or fans say that the team should have two players fighting for every position. And that's very difficult. But Benfica is as close as they've ever been to it that I can remember. Where really there's two guys for pretty much every position, at least two guys.
yeah, there's a very balanced squad, I think. And then it's not like, okay, well, we got this guy from Brazil, and he plays left back, and let's see how he does. And he's a big enigma, and then it turns out that he's an absolute scrub. But the guys that we've seen so far, guys that have been filling in, like the positional battles, we've all thought, at least myself, I've thought that they're very adequate replacements. And it's really on a lot of these positions, there's a huge toss-up. And I think right now, I know that we said Servio over Carrillo and Pizzi over Salvio, but either one of those guys could play. The only guy that I think right now that you say he's the first name on my list is perhaps Jonas. Everyone else, at any given Sunday, what do you think, Steve?
Jonas and Fesa at this point.
Well, face if he's healthy.
Yeah, you have to. That's the key. If Jonas and Fesa are healthy, they're the first two names on the sheets, and then aside from that, you do have a wealth of riches, almost, you want to say, because you just have so many options. But
I remember
Jonas is special though. You
Yeah.
can't. Jonas will walk into any of the big four teams in our league. He's gonna play a lot of football in many other leagues as well. The type of football he's playing in this stage of his career, he's gonna play in France for everybody other than PSG. He probably play a little bit on some top 5, 6 EPL teams. He's that quality, right? So to have him at the club is just really. Don't want to say a bonus because Benfica is a huge club as well, but it's a blessing. How's that?
I remember the beginning of last season talking about how Jonas' staying with the club was somehow potentially handcuffing Rui Vitória's strategy. Boy, what a bozo I was.
It still does.
It's still, but it's a good handcuff.
But it's a great handcuff.
He's that special. Yeah, it's not a negative one.
Well, a guy that produces over 30 goals per season, I mean, yeah.
Plus,
handcuff,
play the way he plays, man.
Yeah.
get me those fuzzy handcuffs. I'm in. Anyway, so now that the season, the preseason is wrapped up, and that we really think that it's encouraging from what we've seen, at least compared to last season. And I know that the results in preseason are everything and nothing to gauge where the team is at. But the talent that we've seen and some of the performances that we've seen from a lot of guys, especially the newer guys, is definitely encouraging. So we'll just have to see. Up next, as we mentioned, the Super Cup against Braga, up in is it Aveiro? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So, um, I guess let's go with the lineup. George, you want to go first?
So I think you'll have Julio Cesar in net. You have no other real choice. I think Grimaldo's got to play because Eliseu's just getting back. Same with Nelson has to play because Almeida's out. In the center, that's the biggest question. I think Jardel's out. I think you might see Luizão and Lindelof in the back center in the center backs, and then I think you'll have is Feixa recuperated or is he still hurt? Does anybody know?
Well,
I think he's supposed to be okay.
Yeah, the word. I'm sorry, George. The word on facing some of these guys that it's a traumatismo. Traumatismo is usually a deep bruise.
Right.
So it's something,
but with the Portuguese, with the Benfica medical staff, that could be 2 weeks or 2 months.
That's some cryogenic treatment there.
I don't know what's going on there, but I think Feixa will play. I wouldn't be surprised if Rui Vitória puts a little surprise in and puts Danilo. And then I think it'll be Pizzi and Servi on the wings and Mitroglou and Jonas up front.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'll give you mine before Steve goes. I think Julio Cesar, Almeida, Jardel, Lindelof if Jardel is healthy. If not, I think Luizão will be in there. Grimaldo on the left. Facey if he's healthy, and I think Horta. He's going to go with Horta. Pizzi and Servi on the wings, and Jonas and Mitro up front. That would be my 11. Steve.
I wouldn't change a thing, except I wouldn't go with Luizão as the substitute to Jardel. I'd go Lisandro, but it would probably be Luizão more than likely.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Super Cup comes up this Sunday. I don't have the time in front of me. It's Stadio da Aveiro, but I'm thinking it's going to be the regular 9 o'clock, 8:30 at night kickoff time. I'm thinking. So we're just. I got some Twitter questions here that I'll let you guys answer. I guess I can answer this one from Neil. With the arrival of Danilo, do we really need a player like Celis on the team? Loan out Celis. I find them too aggressive. Neil, it all depends on if anyone leaves. I think that, and even if no one leaves, we all know that Face is injury prone. So I think that having that extra guy for the middle is beneficial. I think that loaning out Celis is probably counterintuitive because you really want him to learn the Portuguese game and you want him to be with the team and get used to the atmosphere in the team. I think loaning him out, unless there's a market for him somewhere in Colombia or Argentina or whatever, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's staying. Jorge, I'll let you answer this one by Francisco Marcelino. Guys, as things stand, who are your two starting center backs? And would you just repeat the same ones that you repeated for the Super Cup?
So I think for the season it'd be Jardel and Lindelof, but I think that with Jardel out, it'll be Luizão and Lindelof. Although that wouldn't be my choice, that's what I think Vitória will play because I think Luizão should be the fourth option right now.
Yeah. Steve, here's ones from Kevin. What's everyone's take on Luizão preseason thus far? What do you, as in general, the preseason for Luizão?
Has he ever had a good preseason? I mean, he's not going to excel in games where the intensity levels are low and there's not really much at stake. I mean, it's just not going to be there for him. He hasn't been good. There's no two ways about it. Now all the games I've kind of watched him in succession, and they're a little bit of a blur. But there was one game where he was quite bad, getting beat quite often. But I'd still, given that, I still don't think that Rui Vitória overlooks him if Jardel is not available for Sunday. How's that?
Yeah. I have to agree. Francisco Marcelino. Should Carcela stay? I believe that will be fair. It'll be unfair if he leaves. A guy like Benitez didn't prove enough to replace him. Francisco, I think the biggest thing with Carcela is being that there's so many wingers right now, and he has somewhat of a market in Europe. It's been talked about that he may be joining Hamburg in Germany. I think that he would be probably a good candidate to go on a loan to Germany. As far as Benitez goes, um, what I've seen from Benitez so far is that he's a guy that could be a little utility player up front. That he play both on a wide position. He could play behind the forward. So perhaps that's an angle that Carcela doesn't offer. If Chris was here, he would tell you straight out that we should have never signed Carcela. But I think that Carcela is a good player, and I think that he could be very good. Given um, a lot of games,
Continuity. Yeah.
continuity in a lot of games. I don't think he's ahead of Servi. I don't think he's ahead of Carrillo. I don't think he's ahead of
Solve.
Salvio. So it's tough. I mean, you look at the depth of the wings, and you look at what Carcelo fits. He's really like an odd man out for me. So I think that if he has market, Benfica should loan him out. If he could sell him, even better. But right now, I just think that he's too blocked, and I think as far as the comparisons to Benitez, Benitez I think offers more in terms of what positions he can play on the field.
I think Carcela is a good example of if you want to look at how Benfica has evolved or improved in the past 10 years or longer or around that time. 10 years ago, he would have started no matter what. He would have been our only real stylish player. No, I remember if you go back a little further, there was an Egyptian guy, Sabri, where he was
Mourinho's
a
buddy.
fancy guy. He'd play once in a
Mourinho's
while,
buddy.
and he played all the time, and he was great. But Benfica has got past that. Benfica now has a lot better team, better players, more depth. And Carcela is a good player. I like Carcela. But right now, the depth at the wing and up front, just he's outnumbered. He's outmatched right now.
Yeah. Here's one for you from also Francisco Marcelino. Carrillo, he's talking about Carrillo. He misses competition for a long time, but don't you think that Carrillo is the most disappointing player of the preseason, Steve?
I can't say disappointing because this is exactly what I expected. I expected to see a guy who was not sharp, who was not match fit, but has technical ability, has talent. So I wouldn't say he was a disappointment. We got him for free too. Took a stab at Sporting. I can't call him a disappointment. I'm completely. This is what I was expecting from him.
Yeah.
I will stand by the fact that if someone said they were going to pay 25 million for him, I would have driven him to the airport just because it would seem like amazing business. But this is what we expected, and this is if we do have him in the roster, he will play a part. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, and we've often spoke about this even last season that we weren't really sure in what shape we were gonna get Carrillo. So right now we just got to give him the benefit of the doubt. It is preseason. I think that I will have to hold my judgment on Carrillo whether he was a good buy or not until perhaps the winter break. At that point, I think depending on the opportunities that he's get, I'll be able to give you my honest opinion on Carrillo. But right now, I don't think he's disappointing at all. I think that he's right where we expected him to be after a year off from playing football. You don't expect the guy to just jump in and show himself in very good form after you spend a year away from competitive football.
Yeah. And again, here's another example of Benfica's growth as a team. Before every summer, we were waiting for that savior to come in and be our goal scorer, be our star. Now we just need the players to come in, fit in, and play well because the team has improved enough that we don't need that savior to come in.
Hey, are you part of Luis Felipe Vieira's election campaign? Because it sounds like you're on that.
Yeah.
Hey, when you remember,
I'm not against you. I'm just
no, I
busting
understand.
your chops.
When you remember missing Europe and losing 7-1 and celebrating when you beat teams from Romania with last minute goals, This is the high times. I wasn't around for the 60s and 70s, so I gotta enjoy this while I can.
Yeah. My Golf Ventures says, does Luizão play in the Supertaça for symbolism and then rides the bench in favor of Lindelof the rest of the year? That may, I think that Lindelof, if he's healthy, he plays. If
Yeah.
Chardel, he plays ahead of Luizão. And Neil, just because Luizão is the captain doesn't mean that he's gonna have to start. If you remember a few years back, Nuno Gomes was our captain and he barely played. But every time we needed to lift the trophy, there he was. Doesn't guarantee just because you're a captain doesn't guarantee you a starting spot. So
True.
I think that if Jardel can't play, I do think that Luizão will get it, just because I think there's a lot of symbolism there. Is he the guy for the season? I don't think so. And it seems that every year we discuss this, but as of right now, you got to look that this guy is a year older every single time. His mobility is not the best. He's still got the football brain. He still has the voice of the coach inside the field on the pitch. But I think that right now it's time for the transition, and I hope that Benfica are careful in the way they handle Luizão's transition into the bench and possibly at a position, at a post within the club. I think that Luizão wants to retire a Benfica player, and I think that Benfica should do everything they can in order for him to go out through the big door, I would say.
Agree.
Here's a comment from Kevin. We got to give Carrillo time to get into his groove. He'll be good for Benfica, i.e., Mitroglou, and I agree, which took off in December, which I agree. I think that if you guys remember last year, the first half of the year, it was going between Mitroglou and Jimenez, and then all of a sudden, Mitroglou just cemented his place, started scoring goals, and he was an undisputed starter. So maybe that's the same thing for Carrillo. You got to give him a little bit of time. I think that the year away from competitive football is a long time, so you got to let him get back into the groove, I think.
And I think also at the start of last year, Carrillo was one of the league leaders in assists or something. He had a really good start to the season last year.
Yeah.
So he's just rusty. I think he's just rusty.
Yeah. All right. So comes up this Sunday, as I said, the Super Cup, which is the official start of the Portuguese football season. So Benfica will play against Braga at Estádio de Aveiro. I've read some things that the game was sold out, but then again, I heard that there was some still tickets available. I think that Cristiano will be at the game. So we'll just have to check in with him, see how that was.
And
Steve,
the game is at 8:45.
yeah.
Portugal time.
Yeah, Steve, in another news, Nelson Oliveira to Swansea on a permanent deal. What's your thoughts?
That's been a long time coming. That's
Yeah.
all I got to say about that. I mean,
Yeah.
we've tried with him under JJ Rui Vitória. Rui Vitória knew him from Passos, and when he was a young kid with a lot of promise, and he did pretty well with him. Didn't even give him a time of day this year. So I think that explains a lot about where Nelson Oliveira is in terms of our thought processes. So there he goes.
Yeah. For me, look, you guys all know how we feel about Nelson Oliveira. He's a guy that has a skill set that, for his age, and at the time he was playing with guys his age, was a standout. He was a guy that carried a team on his shoulders with his skill, but I think that he just hasn't progressed into the next level. So hopefully, by playing in England, which will now be his third year in England. He did play with Swansea on a loan deal, albeit didn't play that much, and then he was was it QPR last season or Nottingham Forest?
Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
His problem is that he gets injured every season.
His problem is
Just
that he's
as
an
he's
idiot, and so is his dad. That's all.
Just as he's starting to play well, he suffers these season-ending injuries.
Yeah.
So the potential is there. We know there's something there, but what is it?
Yeah, it's another guy that has some kind of a mental blockage. So he has to take it upon himself. Now that he's no longer connected to Benfica, he's got to just reach down, eat a big old bowl of humility, and just show everybody what you're capable of, man. That's it. And I'm sure that if you're good enough, maybe one day Benfica will fish you out. João Teixeira going to Wolves also. It's got like Benfica C over at the Premier.
No,
Over.
there's a link. George Minge and the owner of Wolves are friends or some shit
Yeah,
like that.
they're business partners. So
Yeah, there you
There's another guy, Steve, that we had high hopes for him 3 years ago when JJ first brought him onto the A team, and then he just went away. And last year he was over at Guimarães. Hasn't really shown much. He did show a lot of promise that first year that JJ brought him. I don't know if you remember in the beginning of the
go.
preseason, but that's another guy that just has kind of reached the ceiling or reached the plateau, if you will.
Stop progressing.
Yeah.
Keep on making the same mistakes, no matter, even though you're getting older and should be getting wiser. Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that for sure, with the fact that Benfica was looking for an 8 this season, that this guy was going to emerge as a true candidate for the spot, but we really didn't.
It
I mean,
just it just shows you how fine a line it is between the star, the guy who can cut it, and the guy who just can't. It's a little bit of confidence here. It's a little pep talk there. Because like you said, a few years ago, Teixeira had all this hype because he played so well in the preseason. My buddy Vasco saw him laying in a warm-up in Portugal, came back raving about him. And I was like, okay, let's see. And then he went to the B, and then he just disappeared. Hopefully, for his sake, he'll get the opportunity, and he'll be able to turn it around for himself.
Yeah, talent is it's not everything talent now. You need the mental part also and the work ethic, if you will. All right, I think that's all I got. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
No, sir.
The only thing I have to add is, man, the first time I saw Servi on the field, I thought it was Gaitan like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The hair, it's like identical. It's really weird.
Yeah.
That's
Even
it.
playing style and everything.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's like if you squint, it's like, what's going on? Is that guy with some weird haircut or something? Yeah,
It's
wow.
it's really, really interesting.
All right, call me crazy, but I think that Servi has the ability to surpass Gaitan.
I can't remember Gaitan's vividly enough from when he first showed up from Boca.
Gaitan was intermittent at times. There was some years that Gaitan was
That I
just gone
remember.
for half the year.
That I remember, but I'm saying like the first preseason, the first few matches with him, I don't remember it that well. You know what I mean? So I can't say. After a year in, would we be able to have this talk? Probably, and that's when we'll go by that. But right now, it's still it's too early in so many different ways.
Yeah. George, Twitter, bro.
At Negative George. And I want to thank you guys for having me on because every time I appear, my Twitter followers increases by the ones, and it's great.
At Steve
Single
Santos,
digits.
at Steve Santos 6 and at Benfica Podcast is where you can find us on Twitter. Also there's a group on Facebook. You can check us out there. So thank you very much. planetbenfica.co.uk. Check out our friends there. benficapodcast.com. iTunes. Steve, you want to plug
One more
something?
thing, we were followed by the official English account from Benfica. That's pretty awesome.
Right.
Nice.
I don't know how we pulled that off, but we did it.
I think a certain Sergio did it. But anyway.
Now I think we have to be respectful. We can't put stupid shit on our Twitter feed. So
Gotta be careful.
Speaking of the English language, with Benfica games still appearing on Benfica TV this year, is our main man Patrick Kendrick still there? He's
Patrick
not. He's
is
not
done.
there. That's too bad.
Patrick is done, and from what I understand, and this is still quite on a hush hush, and basically deals are still being cut. Is that we're very close to an announcement by a major broadcaster in the United States about carrying the Portuguese league. So
interesting.
We'll just have to, and I say United States, I say in North America. So we'll just have to see how that develops. Maybe some developments will come in the next few days. So we're just hoping for that. I think that's it. Thank you very much for checking us out. Planet Benfica, as I've said, Benfica podcast. Thank you very much. Next week we will be back. We'll wrap down. We'll wrap up the Super Cup game against Praga, and we'll look ahead to the first game of the season, and also look ahead to what August has in store for Benfica as far as league wise and matchups. So thank you very much, George. Always a pleasure. Steve Santos, always nice having you here. And
Thanks.
thanks, everybody. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, so on and so forth. Thank you very much. See you, everybody.
Ciao.